Welcome to the real Monster D. That would be me. You know, there was a time when the kaiju genre, that would be Japanese giant monster movies, were synonymous with dark, moody orchestral music. This is thanks in large part to the original Godzilla film, Gojira, and its composer, Akira Ifukube. He and his much deservedly lauded dark score brought a somber seriousness to this original film, and that influenced many kaiju films to come. However, that would eventually change in a big way, and I do believe there is one film above all others that really put a change into that whole, what was becoming sort of a kaiju stereotype. And that film would be Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, also known as Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. You see, this film came out in 1966 and was originally intended to be a King Kong film. That already served to sort of brighten this film from some of its previous somewhat darker brethren. But I do believe that there were two key changes that really changed the pace here. And that would be change in personnel. Number one, in director, for this was the very first Godzilla film directed by Jun Fukuda. And along with him came a new composer to the Godzilla series in Masaru Sato. Now, Sato was no novice at this point. Oh, hardly. He had already scored films for Akira Kurosawa himself. And whereas Akira Ifukube was trained in a way that was much more akin to classical European style music, like Wagner, Sato was much more at home, being influenced by American pop styles. In particular, he drew inspiration from the likes of jazz, big band and swing, and in this case, yes, surf music. Yes, this was the movie that brought the kaiju and the surf music together. And as it turns out, they were a perfect match. I mean, think about it. This is Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. This entire film takes place in and around the Pacific Ocean and on tropical islands. It's a perfect setting. Not only that, this features two sea monsters. Do not forget that. Sure, there's Ebirah, but Godzilla himself is in fact a sea monster. So twice the heavy waves to be thrown about here. Yes, and this film is filled with sun and surf and sea monsters, but even more than that. One of the early plots in this film, talks about a missing person, the brother of the actual protagonist who is chasing him down. But early on, he is seen participating in a dance marathon in which you can clearly hear surf music. And you see them put the surf music to apt use when you see all these dancers sort of sweating and swaying and doing everything they could to not pass out and drop onto the floor, because surf music, for its time, was a very heavy type of music. It relied on fast, hard riffing and reverb, which was meant to mimic the sort of crashing waves of the actual surf itself. Perfect! A perfect metaphor for the heavy, thunderous waves that would be caused by many a sea monster, not just Godzilla and Ebirah. Yes, so this movie really created a true rock lobster with Ebirah himself and with this wonderful surf music. When people talk about the origins of heavy metal, they often bring up classic rock and roll, the blues is often referred to, even jazz to some extent. And of course, you had the true metal starters like Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath, and Jimmy Page in Led Zeppelin, as well as Ritchie Blackmore. But I do believe there is another metal missing link that is not credited enough these days, and that would be the realm of surf rock. Yes! Surf rock was brought to the surface largely through the enigmatic stylings of one Dick Dale. He employed this heavy, quick riffing style along with reverb, which was something not so much being used popularly at the time, and really created something new. He really wanted to employ this to mimic the crashing waves of the ocean and really bring something that people could hear and listen to almost despite the actual crashing waves. And his stylings and the stylings of many surf rockers were carried on. You see, I think one of the reasons that surf rock is often overlooked as a metal influence is really because of the Beach Boys. Not that the Beach Boys are not legends in their own way, but they, along with their vocals, came and sort of softened a certain section of surf rock. Because you see, before them, it was almost an entirely instrumental genre. Its more heavy roots were buried quickly for the more soft, sort of radio-friendly stuff. But its roots and influences were not entirely forgotten, for some of the earliest of hard rock and heavy metal acts started to pick it up and carry it on for future creations. One of the big sort of influences of surf rock was Blue Oyster Cult. Yes. And if you look at some of their early recordings, I mean, on their second studio album as Blue Oyster Cult, they had a song called Hot Rails to Hell, which had this very classic sort of surf rock riff and beat down to it, while also talking about sort of some almost horrific subject matter. In fact, that became a recurring theme with them, taking those fast, wavy beats and bringing them into something a little more sinister. There's a bonus track on this sort of this reissue of Spectres called Dial M for Murder. It is very much placed upon a classic surf rock sort of riff. And beyond that, Buck Dharma himself has gone on record in an interview to say that before forming Blue Oyster Cult, he had originally wanted to be a surf rock guitarist. So that influence was always there. And then if you look into their album Cultosaurus Erectus, there's a song called The Marshall Plan, in which singer Eric Bloom, he starts riffing and talking about how I don't want to make no surf music. He makes fun of it, but that's sort of a snide callback to Buck Dharma and Blue Oyster Cult's sort of early leanings and inspirations. So they were a big carryover from surf rock into hard rock and heavy metal. And going beyond them, if you look at a band like Beachy, they had an early song called Crash Course in Brain Surgery, which was very heavy, very fast, and I would dare call this an early thrash inspiration, to the point that this was actually covered by Metallica in their Garage Days Revisited EP before they really got going. And by the way, I had long thought that surf rock was perhaps even more of a missing link to thrash metal than perhaps traditional heavy metal, which came from the sort of the bluesy Sabbath side of things. Yes, so, and that tradition has carried on into modern times. Why, there is even a band that goes by the name of Kaiju, who don themselves in this sort of faux neo-geisha paint, and they play what really is just straightforward, all instrumental, no vocals, surf rock. It really is classic surf rock, just brought in and now. But their songs have titles like The Trouble with Those Mothra Girls, or Die Kaiju Die, or Attack of the Crab Women. They have these fantastical kaiju-themed titles, but it is surf rock. And yet, if you ever look at live footage of a Daikaiju show, the type of crowd that they attract tend to be metalheads and punk fans. So you have more modern and younger punk and metal people who are attracted to the stylings of true surf music. Well, that entire tradition has not died, and it has most recently been resurfaced, being brought out of the waves yet again by one of my personal favorite bands, A Sound of Thunder. As a preview to their imminent release, The Crimson Cult, they have put out to Kickstarter backers a surprise song called Beach Murder Party. You see, going all the way back to the traditions of Blue Oyster Cult, they take a very classically surf rock riff and they mix it with a very horrific theme. Of course, Thunder being Thunder, they add a certain level of comedy by making sure they employ lyrics about coconut and suntan and let me just say seafood. And they really bring all this together. They stew this together into this sort of horrific, comical sort of B-movie aesthetic in this more traditional surf rock song. But then, by the time they get to the end of this surf rock beach murder party, then they ramp the power up, and it transitions from being a more traditional surf rock song into being more of a classic, A Sound of Thunder heavy song. But all the while, it is stitched together by Nina's soaring vocals and brought together by Josh's awesome guitar riffing, which here, rather than, sort of riffing and soloing all over the place and going crazy, almost aligns itself more than before with the rhythm section, with bassist Jesse and with drummer Chris. So they really keep this intentional, rhythmic surf feel right up until they start changing it into this more traditional to them, heavy metal feel. So again, as I said, surf rock really is the missing link to heavy metal. And if you want more proof for that, I highly recommend, when it is released, making sure you secure your copy of A Sound of Thunder's Crimson Cult, and beware of the Beach Murder Party. Welcome to another drawing challenge. Thank you for coming ashore. Today, I thought I would create an entire monstrous scene inspired by all the surf music and sea monsters we have talked about today. I'm actually just going to create one big, sort of like a surf sea monster poster here. Essentially is going to be a monster making landfall at a beach and chasing some people away. So I'm going to create the rough outline for this, and perhaps even give you a few tips on ways that you could create your very own sort of beach scene. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use some highlighters for this. And first thing I'm going to do is create a horizon line, because the cool thing about a beach and the ocean scene is it comes with an actual horizon line, a very defined one. Beach scenes are, in a sense, easier because of that. So we're going to use that horizon line to dictate the distance. This is where, if the sun would set, it would set. This is where the ocean ends, that sort of thing. Also, I'm going to use that very same line to place some beachgoers that are going to be running away. So I'm going to use a trick here by placing all of them, where their eyes would be, on this line. So I'm going to start with a head right here, and the eyes are going to be right about there. I'm going to create another head way back here, and then I'm going to create another head way back here. And then I'm going to create some waves down below there. Now, anything below this horizon line is going to ultimately face and point down. Anything above the horizon line will go up. So these bodies, and if you want to make it easier to distinguish, you can change the colors up for the people. So maybe I'll go with orange for right now and just create some basic stick figures just to get the idea. And although I'll slant these stick figures because they are going to be running away, just create some basic sort of understructure stick figures. I do these sort of circles for their chests, circles for their abdomens, and they're just stick people. And then put arms out because they're going to be running. And maybe this one will be the more traditional sort of jog run, if you will. So there we go. So we got that going. Just keep everything basic to start out with, and then just build on it as you go. So, and then in the back. Now remember, everything is going to face downward here. So all those lines will look down. Okay? So there we go. And then I'm going to start to bring a little bit of definition to what these people will look like. These beach goers, very traditional beach goers. Some trunks on that one back there. A little bit of foreshortening on the feet and the legs back there. And then slightly obscured by the hair of this one. This will be a screaming beach babe. Keep going. All right. And then at this point, we're just filling out the basic shapes of the bodies. All right. You could always change colors again to help with the definition of the three figures. So maybe this one in the forefront. Let me see if green will work here. There we go. So that's that. And then rising up right out of the horizon, all the way in the background, is going to be the sea monster. And I'm going to keep the sea monster very simple here. Actually, you know what I'm going to go with? I'm going to make this a very stylized, very cartoony version of a Man-O-War. And how cartoony and how stylized will we get? Well, I'm pretty sure Man-O-Wars do not have eyes. But this time, I'm going to give this thing some eyes. Okay? So, it's going to be this eyeful Man-O-War. And then, let's see. I'm going to give it this little tentacle, some tentacles that are reaching out and getting bigger. The tentacles are going to follow the waves out. There we go. So we're going to have this rough kind of beach form there. So it does not look like much. It's just a bunch of squiggles, some lines, some circles. But you use this sort of understructure just to get you going. All right. Fill out the hair there. Some of the things that I draw and outline actually will not even make it anyway because they'll be behind other things. So I got to watch. I suppose I could decide to make shorter hair for somebody just to make sure something gets seen. But anyway. Let's see here. All right, so I'm going to keep fleshing that out. And eventually, I will just get tired of that and just go ahead and start adding some details. Let me take a pen and let me start over here with this young person. And just add details over top of the understructure, which acts as a skeleton for the actual body. We'll keep it nice and simple, sort of cartoony in a sense. All right. And draw some of the body there. Draw a little bit of the fist as she's gripped and clenched and running. And you know what? Maybe this person will just have like a one piece. We'll go that route. Why not? So we have this person here. It's real simple eyes. Some quick lashes. Keep going. And then, sort of there. And then I'm going to go to this person in the back. I could potentially, and maybe I should, change markers for something a little lighter, but the glory of the chisel tip is that it can be both heavy and light depending upon how you use it. So I'm going to attempt to do that. So another trick to separate the different sides is the image that's closest to you is going to have the thickest lines, and that which is further back will have thinner lines. Okay? All right. So some thin lines for some thin arms there. Almost go for a simplified, kind of like a Hanna-Barbera look there, in a sense. Ugh. All right, so let's see. Put on the bathing suit there. Rest of that body. Running for her life. Ah! Just a bunch of C's for the toes there. Always think in terms of simple shapes to get the shapes you really want. There we go. And then the other arm. There we go. So that's that person. And now I am going to switch markers. Now we're going to have one sort of beach hunk back there running from it all. Ooh, I may actually need to go thicker with this ultimately, but this is still a good start. All right. Also to create a sense of foreshortening. The parts of the bodies that are closer to you, you put those lines sort of in front and ahead of the conjoining lines of the same image. So his top end is going to probably be going towards you a little bit more than his front, than his bottom half. So then you show that with the inner lines that you draw. Let's see, and then I'm going to have this leg sort of running out, and the other back leg sort of running behind him because he's running. And then feet with tootsies. And that would be a longer leg, but it's blocked by her arm. There we go. Fill that in a little bit. And by the way, I'm going to start to work on this beach scene. Some waves. Triangles are very good shapes for waves. In fact, you know what? I'll worry about less of the actual monster part and more of the actual waves themselves crashing on in. And then use that as a form of mystery for the creature itself. And we'll start drawing this monster now. So the Portuguese man-o-war is an interesting creature. It is kind of a jellyfish, or I believe related to jellyfish. And its body shape is extremely roughly kind of like a football, about the size and dimensions of a football, give or take. But then its tentacles reach so far out that in some species, in some cases, they can stretch all the way across a football field. Pretty intense, huh? So this creature might be way out in the distance, which is scary enough, but then its tentacles can very quickly reach a lot closer to home. I don't have a lot of room to portray that, but I will. Let's see there. Maybe that'll just be one right there. All right. And yeah, I can already see I need to find another. I need a thin pen, but one that is still thick enough. I'll go back to this guy and give him some heavier underlines just to make sure he stands out from the sea monster and the sea itself. There we go. Give him some shade on the hair. And actually, maybe that could help pop things out too, as just a little bit of shade all around. All right. There we go. And I guess that depends upon where the sun is. Maybe there'll be less sun or less shade on their front if the sun is higher up, or if the sun is sort of in front of everything. That would change the whole thing. So maybe we'll just have it all kind of. Maybe the sun will be like right on top. So then we'll have shadows on the bottom. She's too close. You really won't see her shadow. Let's see. Oh, and then I'm going to have some dots for the sand. Dots for the sand. Be nice and light for the dots in the back. And then as you get closer in the front, have those dots get a little heavier and a little more intense. Maybe even some little dunes there. If any of them were veering too far to the left or right, I might even have little like sand prints, evidence that they're running in the sand. Anyway, so there we go. There we go. Just keep going. Weirdly, even though that sea monster is in the distance, I feel like he needs a little more heft, just to let you know that he is in fact a giant monster and not kidding around. So I'm going to make his undersides that much thicker. There we go. There we go. All right. And actually, I feel like this monster could probably use a little more shade. Give him that much more mystery, mystique. So you go, what is that rising in the distance? There we go. How about that? And then fill in those pupils. And I know, if you know me, you know my disdain for putting eyeballs on spiders where they do not belong and smiley faces. But hey, those are cliche. You do not see man-o-wars walking around with eyes and cartoons and window decorations anywhere. So I might actually just be starting a brand new trend. Maybe I'll grow to loathe it later on as well. Some swervy designs there to make it pop out a little bit. All right. So we're close to it right now. I mean, I can always do more. That's the fun thing about doing these art projects is you're never really done. Sometimes you just run out of time. Notice I did not set a timer today because I did not want to necessarily rush through this. Just have a little bit more beach fun. Okay? But I'm going to keep working on this drawing. If you want to try to do a beach scene like this as well, by all means, feel free to do that. And feel free to post that and tag me on Instagram or post it on my Facebook page. I would love to see your artwork as well. We can share each other's monstrous artwork. Well, I'm going to keep working on this, but as I prepare to do that, I wanted to thank you for watching this episode, and I hope you have enjoyed not only this drawing challenge, but this episode entire. If you have, please do scratch that like button and toll that bell so you can be ready, willing, and salivating for the very next episode of The Real Monster D. Stay monstrous!